Hello, everyone. Hello. It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for joining me for our weekly stream. And of course, today of all days, I'm having like all sorts of weird little stuff and nonsense going awry because today I intend to be sharing some sewing horror stories. How exciting! I am very excited. I'd be more excited if the Ruddy app were not hiding your comments from me. Why is it doing this? Hello, it's good to see you. I can't see your comments. I hate everything about that. Well, I can sort of see them on the screen. How nice. Hello. It's wonderful to see you. I see Argent Peacock and I see Bess. Hello, my darlings. They did an update and now everything is different. And so that's unfortunate. All right. No, there we go. Well, hello, Selena. It's good to see you. So keep in mind that my eyesight is very poor and your messages are about a 16th of an inch size on my screen right now because of their oh so lovely update. It's really rubbish. So I'm really selling this app to all of you. So yeah, that's very distracting and has completely derailed me. Hello, everyone. So our first horror story is that sometimes the technology you use sometimes the technology I use in order to connect with all of you decides to update things to be helpful and good, and it's actually totally trash, and you don't know about it until we go live. So that's jolly. I hate it. No, I did not want that. All right, well, fun. That's the platform that is currently driving me bonkers. So you might not want to use it. Oh, look, now we can see your comments. All right. I promise I'll stop mucking about. So we can get into the sewing and talk about sewing and also chat with Monsieur Gatteau, who is here and feeling his oats. Hello, everyone. Oh my gosh, I feel so much better now that I can read your comments. You have no idea. I really do want to see what you're saying. So I get very frustrated when I can't. Oh my gosh. So Argent Peacock says, my horror story this week is doing markdowns. Oh my gosh. In the children's department the week of Halloween, keep the sage handy, folks. Yes, my heavens. And Bess wants to know the best question. What are we making today? Also, hello, Phyllis. And thank you, Selena. I'm, in the season. So we are finishing up the last bits of the petticoat. And I talked about this at length on Sunday. And I made the sort of like fundamental bit of my waistband. So this is my waistband with drawstrings in it. And they are like so on the inside. I'm going to be attaching my waistband to my petticoat, and I hope getting quite far along on it. But we're here currently at a flat surface so that I can start pinning all the bulk of my petticoat to the waistband so I can get to stitching. So let me tell you right now what is going on. I've constructed the waistband. It's lined with a fusible interfacing, and I have the drawstring, which is only in the back portion of the waistband, which required a bit of engineering. We got into it on Sunday, and for those who could not join me on Sunday, I'll be posting that video to Patreon once I get it edited. So today we're going to be doing all of the pinning and gathering and nonsense. So what I tend to do with my waistbands is, especially for something like this, where it's a petticoat, is that I finish everything by machine. I don't do a lot of hand finishing for it. So I'm preparing it to do machine finishing. And so I start by sewing my waistband in right side of the waistband to wrong side of the petticoat. Then I'll be folding it to the right side and stitching it in place. So the petticoat is essentially together. Oh, all right. Selena asks, how wide do I typically like my waistbands? All right. Great question, because it varies, and in part it varies so I can kind of stack them so they kind of are self-grading. So usually I will do like different widths of waistband on the different layers of my garments so that top edge does not all fall at the same place, creating a really obvious hump of edges all stacked together under my bodice waist. So I range anywhere from about an inch wide finished to about 2 inches wide finished. I often will do the final outer skirt at 2 inches wide, unless it's very light, and then I'll do it about 1.5 inches wide finished, and I'll do the foundation skirt. If it's heavier, I'll give it that 2-inch waistband. So it varies by the weight of the skirt and also kind of its position. This is my little petticoat, but I made it a bit hefty. So I've actually made the waistband about 1.5 inches finished width. And so I know that my outer skirt, my foundation skirt is going to be very hefty, but I don't have an overskirt for this one. So I'm going to be making my foundation skirt about a 2-inch wide waistband as a finished waistband. So great question, Selena. So yes, that's my sort of approach to waistbands. I sort of alternate the widths. So again, I get like this little bit of a graded effect rather than getting a really thick stacked edge situation. So that's what I'm going to be working on, is pinning this waistband, and it includes the adventure of gathering up this back portion of the petticoat. You can see all the ruffles though. So many ruffles. The ruffles were sort of my own personal choice to torment myself, as we are sometimes wont to do. And so they took me a very long time to construct and to mount, which is what happens sometimes. We make a choice, and the choice is more time consuming than we expect. So I know that ruffles take time. I'm not new to the ruffle game, of course, but I hadn't done any in a while, and I forgot how tedious, how much time they can take. Ruffles are so wonderful. They add a lot of volume to the space on a skirt. and a lot of loft, which is what I'm looking for. And thank you. Bess says it's worth it. Look, I need to take some photos of these ruffles, and like I also, okay, Bess, you had mentioned when we were talking about this petticoat weeks ago that you could use it alternatively as a skirt, like just to do some history bounding, or just for a fun little kind of historical-ish look. And I thought about that a lot. I thought, Bess is correct, especially given how much effort I'm putting into this petticoat. It's not remotely plain whatsoever. It'd be really cute as a summer frock out and about. Argent Peacock mentioned when we were chatting on Sunday that it would make for a really lovely light costume on Sundays, like a Sunday undies kind of thing. It's a thing they do at Costume College, for instance. Oh my gosh, pardon me. So I decided for the first time ever to put a pocket in my petticoat. Normally I would not put pockets in a petticoat. I can't reach them. I'm not going to be able to use them. I put pockets in my outer skirts where I can reach them. But I went ahead and I added a pocket into this petticoat. So it's ready to go. And it's a inseam pocket. And unlike my normal pockets that I do for my bustle skirts, I installed this one like a modern pocket. And so I lengthened the top so that the top edge of the pocket can be buried in my waistband. So the weight of whatever I put in this pocket is not pulling on my side seam to drag down the side seam, but it is sort of supported by that waistband. So the weight hopefully will not cause my skirt to sag too much and make it very obvious where I have my pocket and that I threw my whole life in there. I also made this pocket deep enough to hold my modern mobile phone in it, and other sundry necessities, so that if I'm out and about and I'm wearing this for history bounding, or if I'm doing a Sunday undies, I still have room in my garment to throw some of my necessities, and I'm not having everything in my hands, if you will. So that is what I have done thus far with this garment. There's been a lot going on with it. The final side seam is still open because I find it easier to put in my waistband when the skirt is still essentially flat. So I will put in the waistband, and then I will sew up that last side seam, and the petticoat will be essentially done. It is missing the bottom ruffle still, but that is because my serger broke, and so I will be coming back to that last ruffle once I have access to a serger again. So long story on that one, but for now we can get around to pinning things in place and chatting about sewing horror stories and all that nonsense. The other thing I should note is that I have pressed in 1/2 inch of the end of my waistband already. So when I fold this over and turn it, it's all pressed and ready to go, and I can just stitch right across that edge to finish it with a little machine stitching. Sometimes I leave it unfolded and I stitch like so, and then when I turn it, it's all very invisible. But since I'm going to be top stitching anyway, I'm just finishing it like this. All right. Of course, I have everything here except for my straight pins. So let me go and fetch those so we can get into it. All right. And again, what I'm doing here is I am pinning the wrong side of my petticoat to the right side of my waistband to start. This makes total sense for doing this kind of machine finish. If you are hand finishing your waistband, you do it a different way. So rather the opposite, actually. All right, Natasha, Aja Peacock's younger cat, would like us all to know she has just rid the world of another fly. It tasted good. Oh my gosh, she ate the fly. And Alicia could not get there fast enough to stop her. Well, look, it's a source of protein. And in the wild, I believe that house cats, domestic companion cats, eat a lot of bugs. So they're fiends for the insects, as it were. So the front of my petticoat is more fitted. I'm not doing any gathers in the front. All of the gathers are in the back of the petticoat. You want the bulk of the width of your petticoat for the bustle era to be in the back. So this is very normal. Oh my goodness. My other horror story is that as soon as we started the stream, not only did technology go awry momentarily, thank you for your patience, but I also started having an allergy attack just in time to be live. So pardon the sniffles. I wasn't sniffling 10 minutes ago. Maybe there's some sort of curse lingering over the cutting table. I don't know. Ooh. I am actually not good at truly scary things. So you're never going to catch me watching things like Friday the 13th. It's too scary. I can't do it. Cabin in the Woods was actually a little bit dodgy for me. I found that a little almost too scary, for instance. So sometimes I can do the comedic horror, sort of horror satires, but even there, it's not always going to work for me. But I can do a gothic film like nobody's business. So like Crimson Peak, I'm so in. I loved that movie. I loved the costumes. Aja Peacock asks, if I leave the stream and come back in, will it stop the sniffles? It works for her computer. Don't know. That's a good question. Although I'm absolutely terrified of leaving the stream, because we've had issues with popping in and out. Oh my gosh. Pardon me. Really, really intense little allergy attack. All right, so I'm just getting this all pinned. So I'm doing the easy part first, which is the part that has no gathers, and we'll go very quickly. I did baste the pocket in place, so it would just be kind of out of the way and I wouldn't have to think about it. Very nice. Okay, and now we go to the adventure, the gathering. So I also, not only do I love gothic things, I love vampire stories. So clearly there's a kind of horror, or at least horror adjacent story I like and can tolerate. Vampires, absolutely. Werewolves, pretty good with werewolves. I like Miss Gale's things. They're certainly not horror, but they contain some of those like supernatural creatures, little urban fantasy vibes there. So I like that sort of thing. And whenever I talk about gathering, especially at this time of year, I think about Magic the Gathering, which is a game I love. And that short lived TV series based on the game. We only got one season of it because the star died tragically in an accident. And so they didn't try and recast it. They just didn't have another season. It's too bad. He was quite charming and also delightful eye candy, if I recall correctly. So whilst we're chatting, I am gathering, and I'm using, this is a very classic method. I'm using the 2 rows of sewing stitches on my sewing machine that are stitched in at a very loose tension, and also at a very wide length so that I can pull up my fabric like so. And I have a lot of fabric to pull up, so I'm just gathering away. Hello, Anne. It's good to see you, my darling. I'm so happy you're here. So Archie Peacock says, I have been on a gothic horror binge lately. Got a lot of things off the watch list. Very exciting. I went and saw the new Frankenstein film over the weekend, and I really loved it. I knew I would. I was unlikely to not enjoy it because I like Del Toro's work as a director. And so some of his stuff is too scary for me. But like I adored Pan's Labyrinth. I adored The Shape of Water. Kronos is an incredible film, and also I could never watch it again. It scared the dickens out of me. It was very intense, beautiful. That's one of his early Spanish language movies. I don't know how easy it is to come by on streaming services. I had to rent it from a small local independent place that specializes in hard to find things. So I have no idea. And that was like 15 years ago that I saw it. So I don't know the fate of it, but it's quite the movie. It has a little steampunk vibe to it as well. So not a purely steampunk film, but it has some vibes. And we love the vibes. All right. So let me just do this. Find my halfway point. La la la. There we are, halfway point. So I did my ruffles for this in so many different ways. It was like a ruffle sampler. And some of that was so that I could show off different techniques of doing ruffles so that people could see their different options. Some methods are really just a question of personal preference. Some methods work better in some situations than others. So in my case, because of the type of ruffles I was doing, I really could use any method I wanted. So it's a perfect opportunity to do a little sampler. But for going into the waistband, I decided that doing this sort of classic method would be really nice because I'd get very even gathers and it would look really nice. here at the top. So, oh my gosh. So Selena asks, this is a tea related question. I'm happy to answer those. With the loss of the wonderful tea punk teas, still crying over that. Have I found another to fill the void? All right. Well, nothing quite exactly like tea punk teas, of course. Every tea company is a little bit its own thing, but there are a few I have gone to that fulfill a variety of my needs. So I really like Friday teas. They have a lot of blends of teas that range from the more earthy to the fruity, and I tend to be an earthy tea drinker, so I really love those earthy teas. They do some single leaf teas as well, and they're very keyed in to the sort of geeky scene, so their teas are often themed along with geeky elements, and they are fans themselves of many fine things, and they do like seasonal selection, which is really fun. So I like Friday teas. I've also become good friends connected with this wonderful new tea company called Morel Tea, and they have a wonderful whimsy to them. They do this really fun thing where they have these characters. They've created this world for their characters, and they theme their teas to match with the character. And the tea is delicious. It's very good quality of tea as well. They tend to have a lot of fruity teas, floral teas, which is lovely. And also their tea is wonderful to be like a welcome into tea drinking culture. But so if you've got someone who's a bit new to tea drinking, you will likely find something from Morel Tea that they will love. But also there's this wonderful thing with their teas. They have like this subscription service, and when you join their subscription service, you get stories to go with the teas and the characters, which I think is very charming. So I love both of those, very keen. I also like, oh my gosh, I have my local tea house that does just Chinese tea. And so it's single leaf tea, it's not blends, and that's 7 cups. And so those are like the 3 tea companies I am getting most of my tea from these days. And I feel like tea punk teas should take note that it takes 3 tea companies to fill the niche that they had in my life, and so I could not replace them with one place. I have replaced them with 3 places. So yeah, but those are the ones I go to. And I really, the other thing about all of those tea companies I just mentioned is that I like all of the people who are involved with those companies, and they are all small businesses, and I really appreciate that I can have personal relationships with each of these companies. So I know the owners for each of these companies. I have a wonderful, very long-standing relationship with 7 Cups. I have been going there for an age, and they do a very fine online ordering experience. They also have a lot of beautiful, gorgeous, very tempting Chinese teaware that is a bit dangerous but so beautiful. And if you have like a tea lover in your life that you want to get them something nice for teaware, or you have a desire to treat yourself to some nice teaware, like absolutely 7 Cups has an excellent selection. If you are like looking for something for you, the fan in your life, or you want to like represent your own fanish inclinations, Friday Teas has some wonderful fan fan inspired blends, which I really love. If you like the whimsy and the sweetness, and just a darn lovely cup of tea, if I can be so bold, then Morelty is lovely. And also, the people from Morelty, they're so charming. They're very dear. I'm absolutely smitten with them. They have joined our Discord. They're very available. They are happy to answer your questions. So that's another thing they really have in common with T-Punk Teas, because T-Punk Teas, they were always very much involved in our community, as well as creating beautiful tea. They just, if you will, they dove right into our Teenanigans, and I really loved that. And so the lovely people from Morality are also like diving into our shenanigans, and I so appreciate that. So yes, those are the three I recommend, absolutely. And right now, I believe Friday Teas is starting their advent calendar sales for their tea advent calendar. So if that's something you like for the holidays. So ooh. So Archer Peacock says, I have also been ordering from the Weeping Glass, which is in Pittsburgh. They have a small selection, but she's never gotten a bad tea. Yes. Oh my gosh. So Selena says, we missed going to Seven Cups when we were down in Tucson over the weekend. Scented leaf tea was at the event with a very limited menu, but those were tasty. Yes, I love the people at Scented Leaf as well. They're wonderful people. And their tea is very good. One of the things, so Scented Leaf, the in-person experience, it's a bit more like going to a modern cafe. So if you are not a coffee drinker, but you want that cafe experience, Scented Leaf is so perfect. They still have some of my favorite blends, but their selection has changed over the years, and they don't have as many blends I like anymore, which is not a dig on their tea, because their tea is lovely. But I do still really love their what is it? They have an Earl Grey cream that is very akin to Duchess Dream from T-Punk Teas. And do you think I can remember the name of their blend at Scented Leaf? No, I cannot. It has completely eluded me right now, because why wouldn't it? So the place that Art and Peacock was talking about, the Weeping Glass, they make a puer that she can make without ruining it. Have you been making puers and ruining them? How? What have you been? I mean, not to call you out or put you on the spot, but my goodness. All right, look. Absolutely, I will always be happy to provide recommendations for teas, for sewing tools and fabric places, and also for other sewing related treats. But I also promised you sewing horror stories. So if you would like one, let me know. Otherwise, we're going to keep talking about nice things like tea. And so, which is totally fine by me. Yeah, the Duchess Dream, such a good tea. I loved that as an Earl Grey, because it did this thing that I think is really important. It moderated the bergamot. So I like bergamot. I like it in my Earl Grey. I like Earl Grey. But so often what I find the greatest sin of any Earl Grey tea I've ever had is that the bergamot is fake. It's chemical and not the actual fruit, and B, there's too much of it, and then it becomes weird and bitter and unpleasant. And so one of the things I've gotten a little bit gun shy, if you will, a little bit paranoid of Earl Greys if I don't know them. And so I really appreciated that Scented Leaf, their Earl Grey, has this like love. It's very similar to Duchess Dream. It has a little bit of cornflower, a little bit of vanilla in it, and that just sort of balances out the bergamot. And also I like that one with milk and just a hint of sugar. So very tiny, because I don't mostly take my tea with sugar, but the splash of milk is very nice. So Archer Peacock says about my description, isn't that all Earl Grey? They all taste like that to me. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think Earl Grey is for everyone because the bergamot flavor is very particular, but I really cannot abide it at all if it's chemical and not the fruit. And because I can tell, and it gives me that terrible experience. And I think there's a lot of Earl Grey out there that has that quality to it, the chemical enhancement rather than the fruit. So that's first of all. But I think if you don't like it, that's probably what you're picking up, even if it's the natural plant, the fruit is present. I think even then what you're picking up is that bitterness is just too strong. And so something like the Earl Grey cream, the Duchess Grey, Lady Grey, they have all sorts of names based on who's blending it and what name they decide to go with. It's that addition of something to balance out the bergamot that really makes a big difference. So yeah, but I'm leery of Earl Greys, unproven Earl Greys, because they can be so terrible. I also, look, I am not really a tea snob. I love tea. I know a fair amount about tea at this point, and I really want my tea to be good tea. But I do drink bagged tea sometimes, especially when I'm on deadline and a lot is going on. And when I'm out and about in the world, I have taken to bringing my own tea bags on travel just so I can have a decent cup when I'm off on adventure, if I'm going to a convention or what have you. Time travelers have to be prepared. And I do that in part because I've had some truly horrifying tea out in the world. So, including one time I went for dinner with friends. I hope you're prepared. This is a horror story. I went for dinner with friends, and the tea was moldy because the tea carafe had not been cleaned in a really long time, and the tea came out with the mold of the tea carafe. So ever since then, I basically ask for warm water, hot water actually, boiling, brought to me in a mug, and then I make my own tea with my own tea bags, because that really put me off tea at places that I don't know, and so I come prepared. So it was terrible. No, it was so terrible. It was truly vile. It was so vile. It's just thinking about it. Yes. It was horrible. No one wants moldy tea. Is really no. Don't do that. So I also right a long time ago. There was a place I loved, and they knew I loved tea. They were so kind. They were just the most lovely people. This is another tea horror story. And they were very proud. They were so excited. They were not like tea aficionati, but they had a cafe within their business. So you could come and do your other things and you could go to the cafe. And I had been going there for a long time and they were very excited. They knew I did not drink coffee. They knew I could not drink coffee. And so they had gotten tea and they were very thrilled to announce to me when I came in that they had tea and they wanted me to try their tea. And they had Earl Grey and they were like, "Oh, madam, it's so good. It's organic. It's from this very small batch place. It's just wonderful tea." But I could smell the bergamot outside the bag. It wasn't even boiled yet. The bag was closed and I could smell the bergamot. And I knew it was going to be very bergamot heavy. But also I felt compelled to drink their tea because they had gone to great effort to get this tea. And I wanted to be kind and at least give it a try. And, to encourage them to have tea at this place. And then they steeped it. They didn't oversteep it, fortunately, because I was there sitting at the counter, sort of watching them like a hawk. And so I could keep them from oversteeping just by telling them it was done. The agony of the leaves had finished. I was paying attention. I have a sense. I've had a lot of tea. My tea sense was tingling. I knew it was done. But I could really smell that bergamot. It was coming for me. And they did not have any milk in the place. No milk whatsoever. They had sugar. I was like, how can you be a cafe and not have milk? They had like half and half. They had those little creamers in the little plastic cups. Those are very dodgy because sometimes the chemicals that make the creamer when it hits your tea will actually curdle. I have another story about that. But so I was like, all right, no milk, only these sort of creamers and half in a little cup that's not actually has no dairy involved in it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to drink this Earl Grey just naked, just straight, just as it comes into my cup. And it was like I was being punched in the face by the bergamot. The moment I took a sip of this tea that I felt compelled to drink, I knew I hated it. It was terrible. It was one of the worst Earl Greys I'd ever had the misfortune to drink. And I did not know how to kindly tell them it was definitely not for me. Maybe there's someone out there who would love this tea because they love their bergamot so much, but I am not that lazy. However, I drank the whole cursed cup of that Earl Grey. I drank it all. I forced myself to make it through that. I can still taste the bergamot to this day. It was so vile. I think they had, I don't know, it was like they'd included only pith in the tea. It was just all bitterness and that very strong bergamot scent. And it was dreadful. It was a very bad balance. Very put me off Earl Grey for quite a while, actually. So, oh my gosh. So Archer Peacock is like, oh, I usually use either half and half or cream for my tea. Going rich. I'm a whole milk person with my tea when I put milk in it. Cream would be totally fine. Honestly, it's very rich but lovely. I've just used less of a splash. But it needs to be like either the real thing, like from a cow or a goat, if you like, or like actually oat milk is also good. but the sort of chemically produced ones are questionable because sometimes they interact poorly with the tea. So many years ago, long, long ago, in the dark, dark past of my time as a time traveler and a tea dueling mistress, I found myself at a tea dueling event at a lending library and museum. And I was so excited to be at this lending library and museum because I love lending libraries and I love museums. They are wonderful places. I'm very on board with this experience. So I was game. I was into it. I was here for it. Sounded wonderful. It's going to be a good time. And they wanted me to host tea dueling. Again, I was absolutely very keen to host tea dueling. What a lovely opportunity to do so at a lending library and museum. It seemed perfect. But, my darlings, little did I know that within the bowels of this library, when they were preparing the tea for the tea dueling, they did not have any milk involved. Oh no. They had only chemical creamer in those little plastic cups. Now, for some reason, in coffee, it seems to be fine and there are no problems. And perhaps the tea might have been at fault. We shall never know because it's a fixed point in time and I cannot return. But as soon as that creamer hit the tea, it curdled and it created these little floating chunks of creamer in the tea. And we had tea dueling to do. This was at the tea dueling table. There was no opportunity to get a fresh cup of tea or to walk it back. We simply had to tea duel with lumpy tea that had curdled creamer in it. People were very game, but it was terrifying. It was terrible. It was spine tingling. It was hair raising. And also, fortunately, we didn't have to use it again after the first round of tea dueling. We let everybody know that they should not use the creamer. But that first round of tea dueling was really distressing. It was horrible. It's terrifying. These are the scary, terrible stories of my time as a tea drinker and tea mistress. So, oh my gosh. Okay, Audrey Peacock says, no, it's gross in coffee as well. Usually the cheaper the coffee, the faster the curdle. Oh my gosh. I think I'm relieved. I didn't know that because I don't drink coffee. So, yeah. Oh no. Bess says she had the misfortune of trying a powdered non-dairy creamer in her coffee whilst on vacation. One sip and the rest went down the drain. The caffeine withdrawal was quite preferable. The horror. Oh, no, look, this is why sometimes you have to bring your own. It's so shocking, but it is preferable to bring your own than to accidentally have to deal with curdled creamer in your beverage. No, thank you. Terrible. Just a nightmare situation. So anyway, I laugh because it's laugh or cry, right? Sometimes you just have to laugh or cry, and this is definitely one of those memories. So, but yes, also, these are horror stories for tonight. So, thank you all for inspiring them. All right. My current challenge is that I forgot that I have a placket, and so I needed to offset the center back of my waist accordingly. So I had pinned up and done all of the nonsense on one half of the petticoat fabric before I realized my error, but at least I got there before I did the whole thing. So that's nice. I really appreciate that. Because sometimes, we don't realize our mistake until we've done the whole thing, which has definitely happened to me. So, for instance, my beautiful dragon costume, which you all know and which I love dearly, is such a incredible labor that went into that, and I'm very happy with how it came out. But I realized that even though I had measured everything multiple times before putting it all together, that somehow I had neglected to account for how the divots, the curves in the base of my overskirt would make it slightly shorter where those curves were happening. And so under those little curves, there are places where the cream colored base of the fabric that I used to cheat out the foundation skirt was visible. And we learned this on the first time I wore it, when we were going to go out onto the floor at Wild West Con. And suddenly, all of this gold fabric, all of this orange fabric, all of this red fabric was interrupted by these 2-inch little fingernail moon divots of cream-colored muslin fabric, which was visible for all to see. I had a little moment in the room. I was brokenhearted. I was beside myself. I felt cursed by my own mistakes. My own hubris had come back to haunt me. And so the first time I wore the dragon costume, Eve, who is very cunning, right? Eve unpinned the back of my overskirt and pulled it lower on the dress, so it was sort of sitting on my hips, and in that way made it hang just low enough to cover the divots. And then we very carefully pinned it along my waist, or along my high hip, so it's about 2 inches below my waist. The bodice edge covered it, and all was hidden, but I definitely was held together by safety pins that first time I wore it. And I was just very chagrined because, the fault was all mine, right? I'd been so careful to do my math, and I'd forgotten that when I cut out those divots, it was going to change the length of things. It's just one of those weird things that it's so obvious in retrospection. It's so obvious that of course it would change the length. But in the moment when I was doing it, I was like, yes, oh no, I measured like 3 times. This is definitely long enough. How could there possibly be any problems? I've been so careful. Famous last words. Mostly I try things on to make sure they fit before we get there, but I didn't layer everything together to make sure it all lined up properly before we arrived, partly because I was sewing down to the wire, which is very normal. I try not to do that. I always try and be done a week before the event, but invariably there's something that is like not done. And in this case, we all know that I'd sprained my wrist, and so it had thrown me completely out of whack on my schedule. I felt fortunate to get it done at all, and certainly in the grand scheme of things, that day at Wild West Con, it was the least cursed thing that happened, but it was my own personal curse, and so I remember it. And normally I don't share these stories because I never want people to feel like bad when I share that something has gone awry. But things go awry. I make my own mistakes, and sometimes hubris is in fact the problem that is the cause. My own pride, right? My own assumption of my skill, my own belief that I've got everything just so. That was definitely the case with this. So it's all fixed. It's all. Did I come up with a permanent fix? Asked Phyllis. This is a great question. Yes. So it's two-part fix. I made a third layer of skirt to go under the overskirt has two layers to it to give it this effect like it's folded dragon wings, and to give it a certain amount of volume in the back, so it's got a little bit more of that rounded shape. And so I added a third layer to that overskirt to create a sort of third fold of wing, and I made that one longer. And so that's just like these two panels that hang forward, and so they are long enough to cover the very shockingly cream bit of the muslin. If I had used an orange or even a golden colored cotton to cheat out my skirt, it would be less of a problem. It would be less visible. But that cream, that unbleached muslin is very visible, and so it's like an eyesore if it's visible. The challenge I found, and this is why it's a two-part fix, is that if I'm not with somebody who is aware that I have this third layer of the overskirt in place, when I stand up from being seated, that third layer will usually be slightly pushed back from sitting, and so it needs to be pulled forward back into position, and I can't always see if I've gotten it, and I need someone to confirm for me. And people do not always notice that and let me know. So I will tell you there are some beautiful photos. They're really gorgeous, and you can see about a 2-inch chunk of muslin because my third layer is not pulled back forward into position enough. So that brings me to my my second half of the fix, which is to have gone in and appliqued a little triangle of silk into the corner where that front edge doesn't always swing far enough forward. But that required hand stitching. It was very fussy to do. I kept it as small as I could because it's all had to be hand appliqued, because the skirt is too big and fussy at this point to easily get under the sewing machine, and I was afraid that I would inadvertently sew through something that I didn't want to stitch through. So the easiest way was to just go in and hand applique it. But yeah, so it's a little bit of a messy fix, but that's yes. And Selena says it's nice to know that even the most experienced sewist makes mistakes, so she doesn't feel discouraged when she makes some. We all make mistakes. Honestly, I will always talk about my mistakes in the context of teaching. So whenever I do a class or what have you, I always mention my mistakes, the things I've done wrong, and this is why I'm showing different steps so that people can avoid them. Sometimes my mistakes really distress me in the moment, especially if I make them whilst I'm live and trying to teach, or if I don't understand how to fix it. That's when I really have the worst experience, because if I have to fix it, it's frustrating and I'm upset. And usually I'm frustrated with myself if I did something sort of like I was rushing or what have you. But the ones that make me the most distressed are when I cannot figure out what I have done wrong and how I'm going to fix it. And then I'm just sort of like beside myself. How will I get in? How will I rectify this? I know it's usually fixable, but the how and the why, it sort of can derail me. So yes, but normally I don't necessarily want to keep my mistakes to myself, but when I am sharing about things out in the world, I never want to frame it as though what I've made is bad and, you know, worthless or whatever, because I don't feel that way. But more to the point, I never want anyone to think that I am judging your work by some unbelievable, impossible standard, because I'm not. I do struggle with perfectionism on my own though, and so I have to like talk sense into myself fairly regularly. Oh, this is this is great. Hello, Cheshire. It's good to see you. So Cheshire asked, what is the most creative fix I've used to push through a difficult mistake? Oh man, that's a great question. Well, this one, honestly, this is one of the best examples, the dragon, because it's like multi-part. Um, let's see. Well, all right. No, I mean, most creative. I feel like the dragon fix might be the most creative, but when I made my very first West kit for myself, fitted West kit for using the Black Snails pattern. This was back in 2021. So we just things were opening up again, and you know, we were going to our first events after lockdown and the pandemic and everything, and everything had changed. So my figure had changed, the Grand Arbiter's figure had changed, everything had changed. The way we wanted to approach things potentially had changed. We were trying to be like more modular in our costumes we because we had changed so much. We had nothing to wear. We had to sort of start over from scratch, and I mean, it was a lot of building in a year's time. So I was like, oh, I've got this wonderful idea. I'll do this thing where I start making fitted West kits for myself, and I'll make a series of different shirt waists, and I will create this sort of mix and match look for myself. Clearly, I did not continue going in that direction, by the by. You can tell by what I wear routinely. But that was my thinking in 2020 and 2021. And so I made this West kit, and I'd also made this new beautiful, like the corset was wonderful. It was really gorgeous. It was all made out of cotton bobinette. It was very comfortable. It was very lightweight. It was wonderfully breathable, which was fantastic. But it gave me a very round bosom, and I was used to a more pert bosom, and it really affected the fit on the West kit. But I was in a rush, and you know, rushing is always a bit dodgy. And as I was rushing, I was fitting over my previous corset, which had a more pert, sort of flatter, higher bosom, rather than this lower, softer bosom. And so it fits differently when I put it on my new corset. And I did try it on before I went to the event, but it did fit differently, and I could not remake the whole thing. I did not have the time, and so I had to readjust the entire front of this a little bit on the fly. And so what I did was I shifted the roll and the fold line on my lapels, and I made it a little deeper, and then I got some really beautiful pewter hooks and eyes that I used to hook and eye it closed at the bottom in a decorative fashion. And so we just changed the front so that the opening of the West kit was wider, and that it was a little bit lower to make space for my softer lower bosom in this corset, because I the old corset was not something I could sustain wearing anymore, or I would have just worn it. But there was a reason I needed to make a new corset. This was all like trying to fit this new figure that I had. So that was, I thought, pretty creative. And saved the day. But ultimately I ended up making an entirely new bodice for that ensemble, and entirely new corsets. And of course I went through a big life change in 2022. For those of you who know me for that long, you are aware that I got very, very ill, and my body transformed again, and so I had to adjust everything to meet this new moment. And since I was having to adjust everything anyway, I just made a new bodice for that frock. And I've always liked the new one more because the bust line is where I expect it to be. The corsetry works better for me. Everything was just sort of, which is very nice. But I think that waistcoat that I made really opened some things up for me, and that I was able to pull it together at the last minute. And so that's one of the more creative, I think. Although the dragon solution is still extremely creative. I think it's sort of peak. I also had a problem. This is years ago. This was a construction issue. So I was making the Scarab Sunrise, which is one of my favorite costumes of all time. I just love it. And it was so much work. It was probably the most involved thing I'd made at the time. And it had all of these very intense gathers in the waistband. It was very thick. She was thick. And I was used to my Janome being able to go over everything. I have a wonderful sewing machine. My Janome is mechanical and it's very powerful. It's older. They don't make it anymore, but I love it. I've had the original one is 30 years old now, which is strange to say out loud. The newer one is almost 15 years old now. So it's not that much newer, but I love them, and partly because they're mechanical and very strong and still mostly metal bits. But it wasn't up for this, and I was like so close to finishing the project. I was doing this, but in the back of the skirt, and I needed to put in the waistband, and I needed to be able to sew over these gathers, and I didn't want to sew the entire waistband by hand. And I was feeling like, oh no, I may have to take it all apart and do something with like cartridge pleating. Oh, what am I going to do? And so I pulled out my grandmama's Singer featherweight from 1951, and it's an all metal machine, and it's all mechanical, and it's ancient, right? I mean, not like the oldest machine, but it's from 1951. It's not a new machine. It's not modern. It's very strong, though, little machine. And it sewed through that nonsense like butter. But I also went in before I started stitching on the Singer with a mallet, and I pounded those gathers within an inch of their lives to like sort of flatten them out as much as possible before I fed them through the machine, because they were very lofty. So ridiculous. So yes, that was one of my more oh dear moments with creating something. Hello, Monsieur Gatto. Do you want to come up? You going to come up, or you're just going to cry at me from the floor? Well, come up. Come up. You are so silly. He has opinions, of course, and he has borne witness to all of these horror stories from sewing. So yeah, that was one of my Cheshire asks, do I have a pounding table in the workshop of doom? All right, honestly, I know it could be quite off color with this, and of course the jokes are there, but the truth is I sort of do have a pounding table in the workshop of doom because I make corsets, because I'm setting grommets and things. Monsieur, come up, be less silly. I know that's impossible for you. Because I'm using a mallet and to hammer in grommets and things, I actually do need a place in the workshop for pounding. Because you can't just pound anywhere, all right? You have to pound with care, and in part it's because of the force of the hammer on the mallet, on the die and the anvil to seat your grommet. If you don't have enough support underneath that, you're not going to get the right force, and it's going to just sort of be a little bit too bouncy. And so what I do is I have like a little granite block, and then I put it on the like most supported place on my table that has a table leg underneath it. And also this one is very nice because it has the wool mat underneath, so I sort of do this stack of things to like make it nice and firm, and also to sort of counteract some of the vibration. So I don't do it on the floor anymore because I am old and can't be down on the floor anymore. When I was younger, corsetier, sometimes I would do my pounding on the floor, it's true. But also you do have to be careful the flooring you are doing this on, because you don't want to crack any tiles with your mallet as you're going at it, as it were. So I used to have this wooden kitchen table that I sewed on. So many of us have started at a kitchen table, right, or a dining room table, and so that table there was the corner that had the leg right under the corner, and that was the corner at which I did all of my grommets. And I am not exaggerating when I tell you that I routinely had to go in and like tighten the screws on that leg of that table after I set in like a bunch of grommets. I would be going at it so hard with my mallet and anvil to set those grommets that I would actually cause the nuts and bolts to start coming loose on the screws, and so the table leg would actually start coming unscrewed from just the action of hitting the anvil with my mallet. So you do actually have to think very carefully about where you're going to be setting your grommets. Oh yes, cake is on the table behind me. Thank you, Anne. That's where you are, silly boy. Yes, he finally made his choice because he was just like sitting next to me and like looking up at me and crying, and I'm like, well, come up. I'd be very happy to have you up here. So let's see here. Oh my gosh, Selena says one of the best sewing tools I bought was a grommet setting press. All right, we have to talk about this. We have to talk about the grommet setting press. I will be back to that. So Arthur Peacock says, I've also ruined the spiffy fabric of the corset, but sitting on my concrete by sitting on the concrete basement floor to set grommets. It was late and she wanted to finish. Yeah, right. Like sometimes you're just trying to get done. Yes, Cheshire, if you pound too hard, you can break the table. It's true. So let's come back to the grommet press. All right, let's come back to this because a grommet press can be a wonderful tool. It can be magical. It can be so great. I would like to have a grommet press. I briefly had a grommet press. It was a very generous and kind gift. And they had purchased one that was like a sort of knockoff cheap model, which does not make the gift any less kind and generous. I'm specifying this because it was a very thoughtful gift, and they did not understand necessarily what they were purchasing. They surprised me with it. And they had gotten it off of those old river traders who travel down the Amazon, if you know who I mean. And it was not up for living in a workshop where you set many grommets on the regular, and it broke on me in under 6 months. I think I managed to set the grommets on maybe 2 corsets before it broke. It's just like the spring gave up. It absolutely broke. So you want to make certain, if you are getting a grommet press, that you are getting a really good one, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of grommets and a lot of corsetry. So I have my eye on one from Richard the Thread. They probably have one as well at corsetsupply.com. Corset making, corset supply. I can never remember. I think it's corsetsupply.com is the website. I normally work with Richard the Thread because they're out on the West Coast, and I have a personal relationship with the owner, Lois. I've known her for many years at this point. I'm not going to try and count them all up, but coming on probably 20 years. And so I usually work with her to get my supplies. And the prices are very similar. So, why wouldn't I work with the small business owner that I know? But it's still like a massive investment, several $100s, and each die set is another like $100. So I haven't invested because it's just very pricey, but they are wonderful. Bess says Wawak also has one, dies sold separately for snaps and things as well. Yeah, I would trust the Wawak one too, because I've never gotten anything from Wawak that was shoddy. All of their stuff has been really top notch. I've been very, very happy with them. So yeah, and if you are hanging out with me long enough, you know that I love Wawak. So yes, consider me like easily convinced to give dear old Wawak a try as well. But the fact is I broke a grommet press. It was a very inexpensive grommet press, as these things go, but still I broke it just by setting grommets, and it just was not prepared for the amount, the level, the quality, any of those things. And yeah, no, Wawak is closer and thus maybe faster shipping. Yes. Well, Wawak, I usually, because I'm so close to them, I'm very close to Richard the Thread too, to be clear. I'm very fortunate in this regard. But Wawak, usually I get things in 2 days from them because we're not neighbors, but they're just like a state away. So they're very close. So is Richard the Thread. They're also just a state away. They're just going a different direction. So I definitely have the advantage of being right here, so close to the West Coast, and it helps quite a bit in terms of getting some of these notions and things quickly. It's different when I'm ordering from Mood Fabrics, for instance. It depends on where it's coming from, because Mood has, I think, a West Coast warehouse as well as their East Coast location in New York, but it still generally takes more like 5 days from Mood, which is fine. I am usually just ordering fabric for a long-term project from them, so it's not like the end of the world. But yeah, no, dear old Wawak, I love them. And I am actually putting together an order with them right now for things I need for the bustle cage and the Dark Academia costumes. I'm very excited. I've also, as an aside, we're in the process of figuring out the embroidery for that project. I'm very excited. So we have to do some test swatching and that sort of thing before we commit. But once I have committed, I will be sharing which embroidery patterns we're using. So if you want to jump in on the machine embroidery and do your own Dark Academia look, you can. And it's very exciting. Oh my gosh. Argent Peacock says, I miss fabric trips to New York City. Yes, I've only gotten to do that once. And it was spectacular. I mean, LA is fantastic. And I've had many positive experiences going to the fabric district in LA. But the New York one is better, actually. Don't tell them I told you that. I don't want anyone to be too distressed. But as much as I love the LA one, New York was just a bit better. So, ooh, oh my gosh. So Beth says her next understructure is the front closing stays from red threaded. So there will be so many grommets. Pretty sure it laces in both front and back. I think you're right. I think it does have laces in both front and back, Bess. And so you are going to have scads of grommets. So many grommets, actually. Yeah. Look, and you're very into the corsetry and you make beautiful corsets. So, I mean, a grommet press would not be a bad investment for you. If you can manage it, it might be a nice gift to yourself. Cheshire says there is a reason why New York Fashion Week is more popular. Yes. Also, I mean, a lot of the fashion houses they have a location there in New York, much as they have locations in Paris and Milan. And so they're right there, and it's sort of like a cycle that fuels itself, right? So they're there, so the fashion district and the fabric district is there, and so they all support each other. But yeah, and like some of that harkens back to like the 19th and 18th century and where things were getting shipped from abroad. And so, you know, a lot of the shipping and a lot of the merchants were just there in New York, right? So it goes. Even all these years later, we're still impacted by that. All right, I'm almost done with these gathers. I think the nice thing about doing this live is that everyone can see the time it takes, of course, including distractions and stopping to like gesticulate with my hands when I'm telling stories, as I want to do. For those who don't know, I speak Italian, and I had a period of my life in which I lived abroad in Italy. Being a time traveler is so fun. And one of the things I discovered is that I do very well with Italian because Italian is a language that embraces speaking with your hands. And I have always been someone who speaks with my hands. So I fitted in. I did well. I assimilated well to Italian life. No one ever suspected I was Italian, though. I did not blend in. I looked quite different from the average person, although you will see some gingers who are Italian. Rarely do you meet people who are Italian and have freckles. So it was really the freckles that gave me away, and the fact that I avoided the sun as much as possible. And I mean, it was a sort of combo situation, right? So the freckles, though, were really the dead giveaway. And a lot of Italian speakers I knew, native Italian speakers I knew, did not know the word for freckle in Italian. It's a very uncommon word, or at least it was at the time I was there, because it's an uncommon feature. And so children would ask me why I had polka dots on my skin fairly regularly, which I found very charming. And sometimes when I'm feeling extra cheeky, I tell people that I have polka dots on my skin, and that is why I tell them that, because the Italian children were certain that I was covered in polka dots, and they could not understand how or why that had happened. So, um, see, Anne, this is it. Anne has nailed it. She says, be careful of the Amazonian cast iron grommet presses. They are made from industrial slag. And that is why I broke the one that I had, because it was an Amazonian cast iron grommet press. And now I know it was made from industrial slag. And that's why I broke it. It's not because I'm super strong, because I am not super strong. I am very delicate flower, and oh my gosh. Ah! Relative of her new to me sewing machine. Any advice on how to tackle the scary? All right. Well, it depends on where your fear originates. So if your fear is that you're going to do something to harm the machine, I would tell you that you need to jump in a little bit and just start practicing with sewing some like basic straight stitches up and back and up and back on some fabric to get a feel for your machine. And then I would tell you, and I do tell you this right now, person to person, you will not destroy your machine by sewing on it. If you break a needle, or even if you break a belt, it might be time consuming to fix, but it's fixable. That machine has lived through a lot of things. It has endured people doing all sorts of stupid nonsense on it already. You're not going to do anything that that machine has never experienced before. It will survive. It may need a repair. It may need a service, but it will survive. So if you're afraid of breaking your machine, you won't. If you are worried about sewing through your hand or making a mistake that you can't fix, almost every mistake is fixable in sewing. And the worst case scenario, you have to cut the fabric again and start over from scratch. But that's usually something you've done before you even get to the sewing machine. Most things can be fixed with a seam ripper and some curse words, to be honest. And we've all been there. So I hope that little pep talk helps you. But the biggest thing I think you can do for yourself with a sewing machine that you are getting to know is to pull out your the handbook, the sort of manual that goes with the machine, if you have it, if you found one, and just to thread it and start sewing some very simple things. I like to get some like cotton fabric, like quilting cotton, or they're called fat quarters. They're these little squares that are ready cut from like the quilting fabric shop, so you can get quite a few of these squares. They're nice size, and you can just sew them together to practice sewing seams. And it's sort of like learning to drive a car, going up and back and up and back, and getting used to the motion of your machine and getting used to the experience of using it, just to practice with some things you don't care about. The big thing to remember, and I don't talk about this very often, which is on me, is there is a position to your hands on the sewing machine that keeps them away from the needle. Often my hands are like fairly close to the needle because I've been sewing for a long time and I know where to put my hands so that I'm not going to sew through them. But you want a hand on either side of the presser foot on your fabric, just very gently. Your fingers are basically lightly resting there to guide the fabric through the presser foot to keep that fabric going in the right direction. And this is something that you have to get a feel for just by doing it and practicing it. And so one of the best things you can do is like learning to drive a car. You're just going to go around the block a number of times, or go up and down your driveway a million times in your car. You're going to do that with your sewing machine, where you just run these stitches up and down the fabric. You learn to go forward, you learn to reverse your machine, do back tacks that way. You learn how to like position your hands so you're comfortable, and you learn how to keep your stitches straight enough. And I say straight enough because none of us have our seams going perfectly straight all the time. Everyone has a little jog now and again. You're just trying to learn to avoid the total dog leg in your stitching. And once you have gotten comfortable with going up and back on your fabric on your machine, then you can start learning to do curves and things. So I don't know if that helps. Thank you, Bess, who explained fat quarters are called that because they are a quarter yard of fabric made wide by being cut half a hand long by half the total width. Thank you very much, Bess. So yes, thank you. Bess coming in with giving a definition for the jargon I inadvertently used. I appreciate you. And to be honest, I didn't know that's why fat quarters were called that. I just know that they are something that people use in quilting, and they are very nice size for quick projects and for picking up some fabric to practice on. You can also use things like old sheets, rags, tea towels, things you get at the thrift store. But I like cotton. I like something that's very stable for practicing on. And Phyllis is right. Check with a local quilt shop. They may have classes to help you. Yes, often your local quilting shop will have beginner classes. And you're in the Seattle area, so I know there are some nice little shops. There's a good quilting shop not far from Capitol Hill that is queer owned, and they're very friendly. And of course, I cannot remember their name right now, but they may have some classes, and classes can be very, very helpful. An in-person class means that you have a person there who can like troubleshoot what's happening and like physically get in there and help you look at your machine and see if there's an adjustment, or if it's something where your machine needs a service, or if there's something that you need to adjust what you're doing. So, and since I'm doing most of this virtually, I can't necessarily see your machine and figure out what's going on, although I will always do my utmost to help troubleshoot whenever I'm able to do so. So thank you both. Great advice, great suggestions, great information. Cheshire, I hope that helps. The other thing is, sometimes you just need a project you don't care that much about and you can mess up on a lot, because we all make mistakes. And early projects are about making lots of mistakes. So, what is that? My iron looks like it no longer auto turns off. So that's exciting. It's just steaming away like a dragon next to me. Disconcerting. And this is why when I'm done in the work, iron, but I unplug it as well. So anyway, Cheshire, also please do share in the Discord, in the sewing channel, any concerns or anything that's going on, because we are always happy to answer questions. And as you can see, we have a lot of people with a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience who can share their insights. I like this. All right. So Cheshire says, it's just so loud and terrifying, it might unbolt itself and get me. Right. Okay. So I do have another piece of advice for you. Another thing that might help. There are these mats you can get that are like little foam mats. You can get some that are purpose made for sewing machines from Madame Sew, and they go on sale periodically. But also, I think you can find them at places like Home Depot and such. They're like rubber mats for flooring. People used to get them and cut them up to use them for foam smithing, for foam armor and things. So they're less expensive. And you get a couple of those foam mats, and you put it under your sewing machine, and it will cut the noise of the sewing machine so that it's not as loud when you're working with it. You are sewing with thank you, anti-fatigue mats. They come in different sizes. You just want one that's like small enough to go on your work table. It will cut down the sound. It will also cut down on some of the motion of your machine. Yes, best suggest a yoga mat. Both of these will work. You just want a little bit of that foam under your machine. It will dampen the sound. It will also keep your machine from moving as much. So that may help. You're working with a vintage machine. They are louder and they're metal and they're powerful and strong, and they've got a very forceful engine, and so they do make a lot of noise. And so if you look at reviews for modern sewing machines, loudness will sometimes be a thing they talk about, because people remember sort of collectively that older machines were louder and the newer machines usually have more sound dampening. They also tend to have engines, motors that are not as strong. So yes, Argent Peacock says Madame Sew usually does have a nice sale around Thanksgiving. She sometimes makes a wish list and sees what's on sale. Yes, and when they have sales, they're quite good sales. And they have a number of notions and things that are sort of what I'd call comfort items for sewers. So that's where, for instance, I get my LED light strips that go on the inside of my sewing machine to like create more illumination on the work surface. I wouldn't necessarily put one of those on a vintage machine if I were wanting to keep it more pristine, but if I didn't care about how pristine it is, then I add them to every machine I can, to be honest. It's nice to have the increased light. My eyes need extra light, to be honest. So yes, they have some nice things there. Your machine, Cheshire, I've seen pictures of it, has been sewn on a lot over the decades, and it has not come apart yet. So it's not going to come apart. And if any of the screws or bolts or things come loose, they are meant to be tightened. And hopefully you have a screwdriver that came with the machine, but if you didn't, you should be able to take any screws that come loose to your local shop. What are they called? Oh my gosh, the shops. Oh, brain fog. Oh no, like Ace hardware store. Oh my heavens. You should be able to take it to your local hardware store, and they'll help you find the right screwdriver to fit the screw. Thank you. Hardware. It was so hard to get it to come forward to the front of my brain. And also, yes, oh my gosh, Archer Peacock, who knows her glasses and spectacles and things, says, more light to read. Welcome to old age. Here's your complimentary quizzing glass. I really love quizzing glasses, though. They're so ridiculous. But yes, I need more light. I'm very nearsighted. And for years, I didn't even need to wear my spectacles at all to see my sewing machine and to sew with. Because I'm nearsighted, it was actually exactly perfectly right for sewing. And it's been a little bit weird getting to this time in life where I need spectacles for sewing specifically, and different spectacles for driving, and different spectacles for reading. I have so many spectacles in the house now. So anyway, but whilst we've been chatting away, I finally finished pinning everything in, and you can see I have a million pins in here in my waistband, so that now I'm ready to stitch this in place. How exciting! I'm very excited to actually stitch this in place. And I'm also very excited to be closing in on finishing this petticoat. So the next garment we're going to be working on is the lobster tail bustle. And I've cut out most all of the fabric. I have to decide on the fabric I'm using for the ruffle. So I haven't decided yet what I'm doing there. And I also have to decide what fabric I'm using for the bias tape channels. I think I'm probably using some bog standard black cotton for my bias tape channels, and I may put them on the inside of the bustle where they can't be seen, because I'm using some really beautiful fabric for the bustle, and I don't necessarily want to interrupt the pattern on that. So that's very exciting. And then I think I've made my decision on the fabric for my split drawers, which will be up next. Whilst all of these underpinnings are happening, I'm also prepping for making the big, beautiful green ridiculousness for our dark academia costumes. As I mentioned earlier, we're working on honing in on the embroidery, so I'm very excited about that. We're sampling and seeing what we like, so I can sort of position things in the design, make sure I like them. Cheshire says, up your split in your underpinnings. Yes. Oh my gosh. No, splitting. So, jokes aside, splitting out the underpinnings in projects is good. It allows me to have something that is a little bit less intense to work on Tuesdays. Also, it's been really fun getting to talk about these things with Patreon and to dive a little bit deeper into them. And it's also nice when I'm sort of at a waiting point on the big project, so I still paperwork or cleaning the house, neither of which are things I'm really keen to be doing. I may need to do them, but let's see. Can you still see me? All right, good. We lost our way for a moment. So yes, and I'm also going to be working on a new corset. So I think I'm honing in on the design on that corset, and I think I'm planning to do some very stupid things with it. So excited. Um, Oh, all right. So Cheshire asked, do I have to face my underpinnings like I do my split drawers? Um, Not all of them. So for the split drawers, I have to do facings for those. For the bustle cage, no facings. There are no facings on the bustle cage, but there is a panel that I your arse panel that goes across your peach. It's a little indelicate, but yes, so there's that. Instead of a facing, you've got this panel that holds everything together. The chemise has no facings. Very exciting. It does have insertion lace though, so that sounds very dodgy. So yes, and I think I've gotten my fabric for my chemise. I found more cotton bobbinettes in black. So I'm going to make another black corset. Apparently, the theme of this project is black and grey. And so the corset is something, as we are getting closer, everyone on Patreon will know about that. And if you've taken a corset class with me in the past, if you have a corset that's languishing that you need to finish, this will be a really good time to like bring your corsets, bring questions. It won't be a proper class, but I will answer your ongoing questions. There won't be any fitting adjustments or like consultations properly, but construction questions and that sort of thing. Oh my gosh, how do you not kick your bustle door thingy when you walk? Okay, this is great. All right, so I think some of it is practice, but also the bustle ends higher than you may think. So the bustle cage properly ends at like the sort of high middle point of my calf. So it's well out of the way of my feet when I'm taking a step. But I do take, I mean, I'm not necessarily the best example. I can take a full stride in my bustle dresses, but my full stride is impacted by my limp. So it's not like a super big stride. It's full for me. But I do have to be careful when I'm backing up. So when I'm walking backwards, it's more the hems of my skirts that I have to worry about than the bustle cage proper. So sometimes as I'm like, to be honest, this is such a lovely question because I don't think about it very often. I mostly walk forward when I'm in bustle dresses. I try not to actually back up that much because it is really easy to accidentally walk on my own hems when I'm backing up. I imagine that dancing in these dresses takes some real practice, but often people will have like either they'll hem them in such a way where they are slightly above the floor or skim the floor with like a little distance like so they look very long but they are just high enough that your heel is not going to catch them as you're taking a step backwards in the dance, or you just practice a lot, or you have a thing that's like hooks onto your wrist that you can pick up and hook your hem onto your wrist so it pulls the back of your skirts up and out of the way as you're dancing. But otherwise, to be honest, I'm just really careful or I don't back up. I move forwards in my dresses. That said, I've never personally pulled out my own hem by accidentally stepping on my skirts, for which I am forever grateful. But I have had people step on the backs of my skirts and pull out my hems before. Ooh, another spooky story. So, so if you have seen pictures of the green and gold bustle ensemble that is long retired now, it was very hot to wear, and it's visually stunning, but was a hard garment to wear, so I didn't wear it scads. Oh my gosh. Archie Peacock says, you need to walk in a circle to avoid walking on the train. There are ways to back up with a train, but it is danger prone. Yes, yes. Thank you, Archie Peacock. Just as I was answering this question, I realized I basically didn't walk backwards. I don't walk backwards very much at all when I am in bustle dresses. I mostly walk forwards or move side to side. And I hadn't even realized that I had made this adaptation. It's just something I do without thinking about it now, because I've been doing this a long time. Time travel sort of trains you, I suppose. But no, I've had some challenges with people stepping on the hems and pulling them out, and the most dramatic was with the green and gold costume. Oh, thank you, Leora, our wonderful steampunk fairy godmother. I love that outfit. I loved it too, even though it was so hard to wear. It was so hard to wear. Oh my gosh, no, I cannot talk about the hem without talking about the greatest costume horror story of them all. The most terrible mistake I ever made in a costume. My goodness, I cannot believe I didn't share this one with all of you. I promised you spooky stories. The green and gold costume, the Emerald City, as it was dubbed. So I made it, but I made it in a frenzy. And it was many years ago, and it is a costume that taught me some very valuable lessons. And one of them was about time management. But I didn't do very good with my time management on this particular project, and I was sewing right up till the end, and I did not have a chance to try it on before I went to the event. And so the first time I wore it was the day I was wearing it at Gaslight Steampunk Expo. And same for the Grand Arbiter. And we found that it was very vain, by which I mean I had to be tight-laced, that I had made a mistake on my measurements, and I'd lost some ease in the width of my garment. I probably sewed something a little bit more seam allowance than I should have. I could have made a mistake when I was putting in the piping and the back seams. I don't really know where I made the error. All I know is I made an error and it was too tight. But we were able to lace my corset tight enough and get me into it. And so we thought everything was right up until I tried to lower my arms. When I tried to straighten out my arms, and I tried to put my arms down next to my side in a normal human configuration, that's when we discovered that I'd made the gravest error of all. I'd sewn my sleeves in slightly twisted. They were about 1/4 of an inch out of alignment. It really only was just the tiniest bit I'd gotten them off of their alignment, but I'd sewn them twisted, and the curve of that sleeve was such that I could not physically lower my arms below my waist the entire time I was wearing it. I could not straighten my arms out at all while I had that bodice on that first day. And we had a long day. We were in that costume for 12 hours. So for 12 hours, I wore this costume, and my arms had to be like here, or I could put them on my hips. I could do this motion. I could drink tea. I could eat food. But you know what I couldn't do? I couldn't do this. Even when I had my arms up like this, it was like I was constantly like a ballerina in this costume, like this. And for the first hour or two, it was funny. But by hour 10, I had the most excruciating burning in the back of my shoulders. I did not know that shoulders could hurt that way, but they had been holding my arms at this unnatural angle for 10 hours. And so by the time we got done with the day and we took it off, we were back in the room. I am fairly certain I wept. But also it's like, take me to a room party. I don't care. I would like wine or something stronger, because my whole back is one screaming muscle spasm and I need a very stiff drink, because we don't have anything else that is going to do as a muscle relaxer, and I was in desperate need. So that dress taught me to try things on before going to an event, just to make sure that everything fits roughly, and is that I have not made any terrible errors. And then also to give myself more time to work on things. It also is the last time I worked with polyester, because when I went in to take it apart and fix those sleeves, the polyester was so difficult to unpick the stitches from. It was fraying so terribly. It was really kind of a nightmare to repair and fix. So I was able to fix it. So I never had to wear it like that again. But it was a real bugaboo to like fix. And it was terrible to wear that first time. We looked really glorious, but also there's a reason why all of my poses are a certain way, and that's because I couldn't lower my arms. So so that's probably my biggest costuming horror story. Well, no, there's one that's there's a worse story. But that's peak. That's a peak story. It's really terrible. And you'll just have to wait for another time to hear about the worst story than that. Woo! Because we're almost at the end of our stream together, my darlings. And so I can't go into another long, involved story. And the worst story really probably needs the Grand Arbiter here to help tell it, as well, as he suffered mightily along with me. And it was a very, very intense day in a costume. So, but we, for every horror story about my costumes, and that's horror, not the other word that you think I just said, for every horror story I have about costumes, there are like 5 important lessons I learned about sewing and costumes and time travel and all of the nonsense. And my grandmama always told me, as long as you learn something from the experience, it is not a loss. And so that's how I feel, even when I've suffered in a costume. I learned something, and as long as I don't repeat the same mistake, then I'm doing well. Sometimes I had to learn a lesson in multiple parts in order to like refine what I was really supposed to be learning. So yes, the horror stories are what gets you. It's true. My goodness. So, my darlings, this has been so wonderful. Thank you all for joining me tonight for Tuesday, our Twitch and Stitch, the horror story edition. I didn't actually do any stitching, but I did do a lot of pinning and so much gathering. So let me show you. This is about 50 inches of gathered fabric into about 18 inches of space. So almost a little over 2 to 1. So quite full, and it did take me longer than it should have because I kept stopping to gesticulate, but it will always take you a bit of time to gather in your fabric. That said, it's going to be a really beautiful petticoat. I'm so excited. Thank you all for your wonderful suggestions throughout the process. If I remember, I will like do a little video actually stitching it so I can show that off. But like, look, it's just going to whoop, fold over once I finish stitching it, and it will look like this when it's all done. Sans pins. I will be pulling the pins out as I sew. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. And if you are free on Halloween, you should join me because I'm hosting 3 absolutely delightful ladies who are joining me for the dark ritual on Friday night in honor of Halloween. And hopefully we're doing it early enough that either you are doing it before, joining us before you get your trick-or-treaters, or if you're on the East Coast, after your trick-or-treaters have been and gone. So I am optimistic. Anyway, I'll see you all Friday night at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time for the dark ritual. And the Grand Arbiter's gone, which means I am left to my own devices. So I will see you all then, my darlings. Be safe. Take very good care of yourselves. And remember to treasure yourselves as I treasure you. And to learn from my mistakes. Be careful with your sleeves. Watch the sleeve position. You don't want to suffer as I have suffered. Good night, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for your time and for being with me tonight. It was so wonderful. Cheers.